My name is Michael Knipp, and I'm here to shed some light on a book that's on everybody's TBR, but not everyone has read yet. And that is Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings, the first book in the Stormlight Archive. If you've been around my channel for a little bit, you've probably heard me talk about how I started this book and I got myself involved in some other read-alongs, and I wasn't able to read this as much as I wanted to, as fast as I wanted to. But I have now finished The Way of Kings, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. We're going to start the video off with my non-spoiler review so that you can get a feel for this, because I want as many people to read this book as possible so that I can discuss it with them. And then I'm going to jump into my spoilery thoughts for those people that have read the book and want to hear my thoughts on the specifics. First of all, let's talk about the author. Brandon Sanderson is one of the most prolific authors of our age. He finished the epic, massive series The Wheel of Time, and then he kind of had his own career also take off. He has multiple best-selling series, and they are all over BookTube. Everyone talks about Brandon Sanderson. Everyone wants to read Brandon Sanderson, and I've never done it until now. Because of how popular he is in the fantasy world, I've actually listened to many interviews with Brandon Sanderson, and I've actually been following along with his college lectures that he does at BYU, where he teaches people how to write. And so I was able to view this novel with his own advice in mind to kind of see how he utilizes some of the things in this book. And if you're allowed to jump to conclusions about an author from one single book, though to be fair, this book is 1,001 pages. But if I were going to make a judgment about Brandon Sanderson, I would say that the hype is well-deserved, at least in my opinion. I have recency bias clouding my judgment, and I'm really trying not to be too hyperbolic. But there is an extreme possibility that The Way of Kings has become my favorite book of all time. Now, I know that the way that I talk about books on this channel, especially the ones that I love, I really do try to hype up the parts that I love. But in all actuality, I try to be as accurate as possible with the words that I am heaping on. I don't try to say everything is my favorite. I don't try to say everything is the best. But when I say that, this is probably my new favorite book of all time, I am not exaggerating in any way. Every part of this book clicked with every one of my interests in one of the most visceral ways that I've ever seen before in a read. Sanderson uses inspirations and ideas drawn from all over the spectrum to combine them into this one massive tome of a book, weaving his world in a way where it doesn't ever feel super exposition-y, and creating characters that are real, full, fleshed out human beings in a way that is, in my experience as a reader, completely unparalleled. I want to reiterate, this is not me jumping on a hype train. This is not me over-exaggerating. I am saying this with as much genuine emphasis as I possibly can. I've never read a book that I liked this much, I don't think. The story that takes place between these covers is one that takes place in a very unique feeling world with characters that I can almost always relate some aspect of myself to, while the characters themselves maintain a sense of identity that they feel like real people that I could talk to. Sanderson mentions in his college lectures that I mentioned earlier that he wanted to create a sense when he was having his characters go through their inner monologues and have conversations that you would be able to know who the character is without any of the names being present. And that is the case here. You can always tell which POV character you are experiencing because each of them has such a distinct personality, unique way of thinking, and individual character goals that you always know exactly who you're spending your time with when you're spending your time with them. Additionally, in a book that is a massive epic fantasy filled with very many characters from different cultural, religious, and geographical backgrounds, each of them feels very fleshed out and is expounded upon in a way that I never once felt like I was getting info dumped on. As we spend time with these characters and the characters spend time with each other, we naturally get to know what makes everyone click. We get to learn about different beliefs in the world, different worldviews from the different characters, different aspects of the major religions in the book, and the ways that the cultures relate to each other, as well as the ways that they have a very hard time seeing eye to eye. And the information drip about every character and their motivations is delivered in a way where you are never completely 100% sure exactly what is going on, but you always want to know what's going to happen next. As far as a story synopsis goes, because of the nature of how the story is told through the character development, I don't want to give too much away, but it essentially starts off with the assassination of a king and a country that goes to war with another country, and then we get point of view perspectives from characters on the top level of society, the highest class, and characters at the lowest possible class you can be. In the interludes between the major sections of the book, we get perspectives that are one-off POV chapters that take place in various other parts of the world so that we can explore some of the other cultures whose names we've heard but we haven't actually got to dig into yet. And we get to spend our time split nearly equally between kings and high-ranking officials, slaves, and basically people whose society has cast off, and educated people who are trying to use their scholastic prowess to discover the secrets of the universe. That sounds a little extreme, but it's kind of true. The way that these tales weave together is just so expertly crafted. It's been said before, it's not an exaggeration. Everything meshes together and it bounces back and forth, and pieces are shown at just the right time to get you curious enough to want to keep reading at every point. It's a wonderful experience to read this book. Now let's talk about the length. As I said, it's 1,001 pages. That's a huge book. It's basically the size of 3, at least 2.5 regular normal novels. Is the length justified? In my opinion, yes. Though this does not go without saying that at times Sanderson may feel, especially at the beginning, a little bit cutely self-indulgent. I used to use the word pretentious, but I realized that word, it involves more negative connotations than I actually mean to imply here. By self-indulgent, I'm trying to say that I think it pulls it off, but normal people cannot necessarily do things the way that Brandon is able to pull them off at the beginning. For instance, one of the commonly known things about this book is that there's essentially 4 beginnings to this book. That helps pad some of its length. It also helps create some confusion if you're not in for the types of commitment that come with reading 4 different beginnings and having to figure out where they piece together. There is a prelude, a prologue, a character's POV that you never get again, and then an actual normal character's POV. That's how the book starts. And it ultimately makes sense because they're trying to set a tone for the world, and they're trying to do some very specific teasing and world building in those chapters. They're trying to lay the foundations for what's to come, and I think that it's effective at doing what it is. But the truth is that there is a lot of words in the book. We're jumping back and forth between a lot of other characters' POVs. As I mentioned, between sections of the book, there are POVs that you never experience again. They're just kind of used for world building and pace changing. There are also a decent number of flashbacks for one character in particular, and for some people that may be a little bit annoying, but I will admit that in my personal experience, as much as I was frustrated when we would switch POVs from one character to the next, and in the ways that I would be frustrated because I'd be like, oh, I wanted to know what was going to happen with this character next. The truth is, it would not be very long before I was like, oh, I really do want to know what's happening with this character also. And then that character's POV would end and it would switch back. I was like, oh, but I wanted to find out what was happening to this one. And I would be convinced in no time at all to care about this character. And for me, that totally worked. I loved the grand scale of everything, the sheer number of characters involved, the cultures, the lands, the politics, all of that. I thought it was very well done and explained in a way that was very much as accessible as could be when you're telling this type of story. But if that does sound overwhelming for you, you may not like it. The themes of the book are going to be covering a lot of interesting, sometimes not tread before ground that I've seen in the fantasy genre. We're going to get the perspective of a character who has like seasonal depression as well as other types of depression. We get to see people that are just beat down in the world, and we get to see a lot of dark moments and dark places where these characters are coming from and what's going on in their minds. That is to say, this is not necessarily a grim dark fantasy, which is very popular right now. If you're looking for a grim dark story, this is not it. This is a book that does have heroes and heroic moments. Now, the morality isn't what I would say is just plain black. There's not a mustache twirling villain who's just sitting there going, I'll get you. But there is clearly honorable characters that do virtuous things in this story that are rewarded. And it is in the moments that we get to see characters who are struggling with their own personal flaws, overcoming adversity, that I loved this book the most. I'm running a Twitter poll right now on whether it counts if you're crying, if the tears actually come down, or if you technically are crying when you tear up. If you are crying when you tear up, then I most certainly cried at multiple points in this book. I also laughed at certain points in this book. When you can have a book that both makes me want to keep turning all the pages, laugh, cry, put the book down going, I need to explore more of this world, that is a huge plus from me. Another thing that I will mention when I am talking about this book is it gets a lot of praise, and a lot of times you don't see specifics. One of the specifics I'm going to say here is the plot is incredibly interesting, and it's driven by characters that I love to get to know. There are parts of the plot that are not predictable and that are surprises. There are also large parts of the plot that are predictable. One of the things that I've learned from Sanderson in his college lectures is that he doesn't actually see a problem with predictable plots, and neither do I. Because it's not always just the unpredictability of the plot that's interesting, it's also the journey that we use to tell that potentially predictable storyline. So while I think this book has elements that are both predictable and maybe a little cliche, though not in a bad way, and some that are more surprising, none of them ever feel contrived, and they feel genuinely earned by the story that's been told to you. If I haven't done enough logical explanation as to how much I love this book and why I do, I want to say that I also am putting my money where my mouth is. When I read this book, it was huge, and I did what I normally do, which is I buy the ebook copy and I buy the digital audiobook copy as well. You get a deal when you do that on Amazon. I don't know if people are aware of that, but I want to tell everybody, if you buy the Kindle version of a book, I don't get paid by Amazon. If you buy the Kindle version of a book, you get a discount on the audiobook version. Frequently, it's discounted by 75% or more. So you can generally buy the audiobook and the ebook for the same price as you would buy a hardbook version. But you may be saying, I'm holding a hardbook version right now. I thought I said about the ebook. As soon as I finished the book, I warned my wife about this. I said, if this book is as good as I think it's going to be, then I am going to buy a hard copy as soon as I'm done with it, because I want to own this series. I want to support the author. This book connected with me in a way that I have not connected with something in a seriously long time. And because I cannot stop thinking about how much I like this book and the different elements of what I liked and why I liked them, I want to jump right into the next book, regardless of the fact that I have other reading commitments that I've made on this channel and with other people. The Way of Kings is an epic, not grim dark fantasy with realistic, flawed characters that you love to spend time with, discovering a world full of magic and lore that is so deep that you can't help but turn 1,001 pages until you've completely exhausted the story. This is the most easy 5 out of 5 star read that I have read since I've been reading again. If any aspect of this sounds interesting, it is worth it, and I think you should give it a shot. Many people that I know that like fantasy have this book on their TBR. I recommend you move it up and read it. I want to talk about it with anyone who is able to. It was absolutely wonderful. And I'm going to leave the spoiler-free portion of my discussion there. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope that you read The Way of Kings. I really hope that I was able to logically get out the information that I was trying to. I'm trying to convince people to read this book that I thought was so awesome. If you liked my review or you want to see more from me, please subscribe to my channel. And if you want to get notified when I make a new video, you can hit that bell button and you can change it so you get notified after every post. If you like this video, please leave it a like and leave a comment below if I've piqued your interest anymore in this series, or even if I've said something that may turn you off. I'm curious to see what kind of things people are looking for. I know that some people are turned off by books that are too big, and I know that some people are turned off by having too many characters in one story. What are your guys' thoughts? All right, now I'm going to be jumping into the spoiler portion of the video. So if you have not read this book and you intend to, please turn off the video, save it in a playlist, and remember to come back after you've read The Way of Kings, because I'm going to be talking spoilers. Spoilers, starting now. Oh my goodness, what a ride, man. What a ride that was. From like the beginning, I just love I can't remember if it's the prelude or the prologue. It's the prelude. The part with the like 10 kings that are forced to slaughter people, and then they like go back to hell, and then they decide to abandon their post, but somebody gets stuck. Like, what a crazy, wild, cool, epic fantasy way to start a story. I actually read that part early January, and I remember I was rocking my new baby girl, baby Tessa, and I was like, well, I'm awake. What's something that I should do since I'm stuck awake rocking this baby? I was giving my wife a chance to sleep. I said, I'm going to start The Way of Kings because I just really want to. I had the feeling I was going to like it as much as I actually did, and so I just started the audiobook, and it starts playing this part, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so in. And then it switches the perspective of the prologue, and we get Zeth's perspective, and he has to do this assassination, and you don't fully understand why. In fact, Zeth doesn't understand why. There's the alliance that was made, and then he kills Gavilar, and you have no idea what's going on, and Gavilar's last wishes are so curious. Then it immediately jumps into the perspective of that poor little kid. I don't remember his name, but he dies. But we get the perspective of Kaladin at his like height. And then we immediately transition to Kaladin at his most beat down state. And we get to explore depression for a character in a way that like I feel when we are looking at characters that have been beat down, this is usually the midpoint of a story where we see a character who tries something and it fails, he gets beat down, and then he ultimately comes back for the climax. But we get to start our story with him being this beat down, and we get to explore the depths of depression in Kaladin that I don't feel like we ever get to see in other characters, and it lasts so much longer than we would normally get to see, especially in a movie setting. When we first see Kaladin in the slave wagons, he does not care about anything. He is completely died inside. And it's only Syl that kind of helps resurrect him from this state. But we get to see him over the course of this story get hopeful and then beat down, and hopeful and then beat down over and over again. And when he has the moment where he decides that he's not going to commit suicide, when he walks up to the edge of that little cliff, and he decides not to commit suicide, and he goes back and he tells Gaz what for, I just was sitting in my car listening to the audiobook, and I was like, oh, fist pumping, like, Kaladin, get him! I was just incredibly excited and happy in just a completely unadulterated, unhindered way that I don't usually get because my brain analyzes things and I have a hard time just letting go and getting to the raw emotion. Not with this book and not with my boy Kaladin. And then on top of Kaladin, we're getting the redemption arc of Dalinar, and we're getting to look at a character who's lived a life and he's realizing that he was a monster and a murderer, and he lives in a culture that exemplifies violence and lording your power over people in a way that is just, we know it's gross and we know it's disgusting, but Dalinar is just now coming to these revelations as he's studying The Way of Kings, and I'm cheering him on in like learning his path of honor as he's the lone standard of virtue in this entire society, and he's trying to get other people around him to understand, while at the same time he's just suffering from these crazy vision delusions that we find out are sent from the past when God was about to die. What the heck? That is such a cool premise. The way that heaven and hell's forces are basically battling in a Diablo-esque fashion, and when you die, your soul supposedly is supposed to go and fight to claim back heaven, and that's probably, I assume, true based on the fact that their god was real at one point and then he died. It seems to confirm at least some of the mythos, if not all of the mythos. And speaking of the mythos of the world, we have Shallan studying with Yasna, and I will admit that when we first switched from Kaladin to Shallan, she was not very interesting, but she quickly did become interesting, and I got a little bit invested in the relationship that she was building with that monk. I cannot remember his name, the Ardent Cabal. And I also felt really bad for her because I wanted her to be able to have this opportunity to study and learn, and she was doing such a good job at it, but she was also trying to save her family, which her family sounds messed up. And not only does her family sound messed up, it's implied that she committed some violent crime earlier, then it's implied she had a weapon. Then they tease the fact that Shallan has a shard blade before you have any idea for sure that she'd murdered somebody. Then you realize she had to have killed a shard bearer. You find out she killed her father, but you still never see her blade. That's still held for the second book, and that's just a crazy plot point. Also, speaking of Shallan, she can like subconsciously see into like the spirit world to see these weird spren that she's talking about, and she finds out that she can soul cast without a soul caster. There's so much crazy, awesome lore happening while they're trying to explain what's happening in the world. Now, we got the revelation that Yasna has, that the Voidbringers are the Parshendi, but I don't think I fully buy that. I think that maybe something with the Parshendi has to do with the past, but I don't fully accept the theory that Yasna has that the Parshendi are the Voidbringers, because we saw an instance of Dalinar fighting the Voidbringers in one of his past visions. Now, it's possible that maybe there's a shape-shifting thing happening, but I think there may be some confusion there. I haven't read the second book, so I don't know for sure. These are just my impressions right now. So yeah, I love Shallan. I love Yasna, though I think Shallan might be better. She seems like a nice, meek, innocent girl who had to do some bad things, but I feel like she's a character that could become way more comfortable with doing bad things than maybe is healthy. I love Yasna's character, and I love the way that she struggles with this like atheism that she has in the world, where she doesn't just full on hate people that believe, but she questions and she's curious about studying things and not using excuses. She wants to be able to justify her own reasonings for the way she lives in her own mind. And she's almost agnostic, where she hasn't completely thrown out the idea of their deities, but she also doesn't want to blindly accept everything that everyone else believes and tells her what to do, especially when she's able to study and figure out some of this stuff for herself, especially when she thinks she has the origins for some of this stuff in her own brain and in the books and journals that she's created. We didn't get to see much out of Renarin, Dalinar's other son that wasn't Adolin. I loved Adolin. I loved the way that he grew and he learned and he respected his father, and he did what he thought was right to try to help the kingdom. Even when it differed from his father, he was able to tried to balance respecting his father and also doing what he thought was right. We got to see that he is now going to become a more prominent character, I think, in that side of the story, because he is the one that has a shard blade and shard plate, since we found out that Dalinar gave his up. Though, man, wasn't that a powerful scene when he shoves his shard blade into the justice symbol to basically stick it to that nasty boy Sadeas. That dirty, rotten, Benedict Arnold, good-for-nothing, red shard-plated Sadeas. I am a sucker for redemption arcs, so I really, truly was hoping that Sadeas would not turn out to be a nasty boy. But alas, when he betrayed Dalinar right before the super epic moment when Kaladin and Dalinar actually meet, which of course I loved, I fanboyed out over. I was just very disappointed in Sadeas, of course. I was really hoping that he would have actually turned a corner, and what he did was, they try to justify it in their world's like social structure, which, hey, their social structure does suck, but What the heck, man? That's a low blow to someone that you still try to call old friend when he comes back. But the way that Dalinar honors his word and trades his shard blade for saving the bridgemen was so powerful. And then he decides that he's going to give his plate to Renarin, so we're going to see more of him, I think, in the next book. We now know that Szeth is coming for Dalinar because the king that we thought was kind of a sap that was in the city, I don't remember the name of the city, where Shallan and Yasna were the whole time, evidently is just trying to take over the world or something. It's not clear at this point what he's trying to do, but he's definitely not the sap we thought he was. Did I talk about Bridge 4? No. Bridge 4 is amazing. The way that Kaladin turns them... You know the saying, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach? He starts getting extra food for the men, and they start converting to him, and they become his friends. Eventually, he's able to lead them into being a loyal troop, and he trains them to be super awesome soldiers and loyal and cool, and everything is awesome about that whole plot line. Yeah, all started because of food. Food is good. Food makes people happy. It heals wounds. It heals the soul. Food is good. I don't know how long I've been gushing. This video is kind of long. What were your favorite parts of the book? If you're still watching the spoiler portion, let me know. I want to talk about this book more. I'm sure there's parts that I thought were amazing that I'm missing. Did I mention that I thought it was crazy that Shallan has a shard blade? Please, please, please talk about the Way of Kings with me in the comments below. Make sure you tag everything as spoilers, or just DM me on one of my multiple social platforms. If you love this book and you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. I would love it. Like the video if you liked it. Once again, please talk about The Way of Kings with me if you've read it. I'm dying to talk about The Way of Kings with more people, please. I've already gone through and looked in my sub boxes and gone through the videos of people that I follow that have talked about The Way of Kings and watched all their videos. Now I want to talk about The Way of Kings with people who have... If you have a video on The Way of Kings and I have not commented on it, please leave it down below, because I will listen to it and talk. I want to talk about The Way of Kings with people. I love the community here, and I freaking love the book, and I want to fanboy out with somebody. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this was enjoyable. I hope that you were able to get something out of this entertainment-wise. I don't know, go read The Way of Kings again. Have a good day.
Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? You've been out riding fancy for so long now. Oh, you're a hard one. I know that you got your reasons, and these things that are pleasing you can hurt you somehow.